Hey everyone, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. On today's show, we're going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news. And it is about to be November. And yes, we're talking about transfers, but it is what it is. It is what it is. That's what we do here on the channel. Everything that we can possibly talk about from an Arsenal perspective, we try to cover. So like I said, make sure you guys get into the chat. Let me know how you guys are feeling post Sheffield, a great game to have this weekend. And then obviously United and Chelsea looking like crap. That's also fun. How are you guys feeling off of the back of that? And yeah, how you guys have been enjoying the content lately. The channel news that's rolling across the bottom, I'll just read this to you guys. The Sheffield post-match show will be available on Patreon today. We just recorded it. It's me and my friend Gabby and Femi. When I tell you, like, we laughed so hard, like, it was probably 10% analysis and 90% banter. Like, it was so fun. And I think after games where you win the way that we did, there's not much analysis that needs to go into it. Like, we just want to have a good time and chat about Arsenal. We talked about United and and Chelsea. And we just had a really good time. So if you guys want to become a patron, you guys can. It's $4 a month. The link is pinned in the chat and it's also in the description. It's just patreon.com/she knows Arsenal. I would love to have you guys over there. If you guys cannot do it or you guys don't want to, no problem. There'll always be content here. But if you want more from She Knows Arsenal, more in-depth analysis and things like that, post-match shows, that's where you'll find them. So yeah, we had a really good time with that. And She Knows Arsenal is about 200 subs away from 20K. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel because it helps us, you know, get more people, get more visible, more eyes and grow the channel. So I would really appreciate it if you're new. And if you guys are, not new, welcome back. Let's see what you guys are saying. Chosen One says, Jess, what's up? Currently waiting on the Ballon d'Or rankings. Odie is joint 28th with Kolomawani. Do you guys want to talk about the Ballon d'Or stuff? I'll be really honest with you guys. It's a popularity contest. I'm so happy that Odegaard and Saka are involved, and you have to be a good player to be involved. But I think it's just not something that for me, like, I feel like we need to talk about too much. So if you guys want me to cover it or give thoughts, I will. But it is what it is, isn't it? These kind of competitions for me are just like whatever. Like, we know Saka and Odegaard are two of the best players in the world. I don't need a Ballon d'Or nomination to let me know that. So yeah, Mafia Boss says, big up, Jess, big up to you as well. Unbiased TV says, hey, Jess, big up to you. Hope we get both Guehi and Zubimendi. We are going to talk about those two links. Zubimendi has been linked to the club multiple windows. We know that we tried to get him last January. He didn't want to leave, but Arteta tends to stay very bullish about players that he wants to get. Like, we tend to see those links reappear, even if we don't get them the first time around. And also Marc Guehi, who's the main topic of today. Zitch says, wow, I'm actually early. Yassine says, happy Monday, Jess. Hope you're doing well. I am doing well. Thank you so much. C. Wilder says, I like very much what I've seen of him, which ain't loads, but still. Chris Duddy says, bring on Bella or we riot at dawn. Bella is getting a haircut right now, so she can't be available for today's show. I hope that you guys still stick around for me, but I know that she's like the main character of the show, so there you go. C. Wilder says, although we've got Saliba, Gabs, Tommy, Kivior, White, even Rice to play center back, aren't there more pressing needs? Arteta loves a center back, so there you go. Jared says, Jess, I think we need to sell Partey. Do you agree? I'm not even going to touch on that conversation today. I want to have a good day. And every time we talk about Thomas Partey, it becomes a bloodbath. Mark says, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to you as well. Here to there says, cheers, Jess. Hard to see how we can get Zubimendi and Jan. Real playing so well in the Champions League. So let's go ahead and get stuck in. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Let's start off with Guehi. Obviously, Marc Guehi, we all know him. He plays for Crystal Palace. You may not watch him week in and week out, but we do know of him. If you are a fan of the English national team, then you will know him as well because he plays for them now. So Marc Guehi is a player that I think came through Chelsea's academy. They sold him to Crystal Palace, and now teams are interested in him. He's probably, him and Anderson like they're one of the best center back pairings in the league. And I know that sounds weird because it's like, well, they play for Crystal Palace, but when you watch them play, you do realize that both of them could probably play for better sides, and they probably will in the future. I don't think either one of them are going to be there that much longer. You guys know I'm a big fan of Anderson. I think maybe he's a little bit too slow for our center back pairing, but when we talk about crossfield passing, passing out from the back, he's one of the best in the league. And Marc Guehi is a little bit more of I would say the aggressive one of the pair, but he also is very good on the ball. So yeah, very interesting link that's been there for a while. Now, why are we linked to another center back? Arteta. Like Arteta loves center backs. Like we've spent most of our money, I think, on or every single window we buy a center back or another defender. Like, what can I tell you? But I think when you see what happened with, having Rob Holding in the team, that you lose so much by not having defenders that can play the way that you want to play. And a defensive injury can really torpedo your season, I think, in the way that we want to play, where in most games we're sitting at the halfway line. And so we need players that can sit at the halfway line and dictate play from those positions, and then also be able to clean up the mess going the other direction. And so I'm not surprised that we're linked to another. I'm surprised that seems like a link that's being placed as like very important, like almost like a priority. But I'm not surprised that we want another center back because I do anticipate Timber to play mostly in the fullback positions. I don't think he's somebody that we're going to see at right-sided center back very often. I think Kivior is going to be left-sided center back cover. And so you have Guehi that could probably play on both sides. He's a little bit shorter, but, it is what it is. I don't think height is the only thing that makes a good center back. I think you can be 6 feet tall and still be able to do a really good job. So let's talk about the link and actually what the article is saying. So Arsenal are keeping tabs on a move for Crystal Palace defender Marc Guehi next summer, with Chelsea entitled to 25% of any transfer. Smart business by Chelsea. Will a window go by where we don't give them money? This will be, if we end up getting Marc Guehi, this will be the third window in a row. I think we will have given Chelsea money. So there you go. Manchester City and Manchester United are also two clubs that are admirers of the defender, although it is believed that Arteta is driving Arsenal's interest and they are in the lead for any future moves as things stand. So that's, you can think of it one of two ways. Manchester City are interested. That's great, because they tend to have really good recruiting. Manchester United are looking at him. Are we sure he's that good? So you can think of it one of two ways. But I think that this is a player that's prime for a move. He's not going to be at Crystal Palace forever. I think his profile has grown so much so that, he's being looked at as somebody that could play for one of the top 6 clubs. He's 23 years old, so he still has his best years ahead of him. And let's see what else it says. With the Eagles are set to demand a gigantic fee in the summer bidding war for England center back. So they're going to try to get like some sort of massive fee. I think anything of other over 50 million is looking crazy, but Palace slapped a 50 million price tag on Guehi in the summer, with Liverpool, Manchester United, and Tottenham and Arsenal reportedly all keen. He's in good form. That's also what this is saying. And they want more than the 50 million that they made for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So remember, Aaron Wan-Bissaka left Crystal Palace and it was for 50 million. That's a lot for a fullback, I think, of Aaron Wan-Bissaka's quality. That doesn't really have anything to do with Guehi, though, but they'll want to get a bigger fee, right? Because since 2019, the market has absolutely exploded. We're paying 100 million pounds for DMs now. So of course they're going to want more than that, Let's see what else this is saying. Oh, I have a tickle. Sorry, you guys. Give me 1 second. Sorry. My allergies are acting up. So there should be stiff competition for his signature. When Chelsea sold him to Crystal Palace, they included a clause for anybody that made a bid for him. Across 91 appearances for South London, he has turned into a leader and a player with wisdom beyond his years, forcing his way into Gareth Southgate's favor. Comfortable in possession and defensively solid. He's a strong all-arounder who could add something to most back lines in Europe, or sorry, in England. He still has areas to work on. He was robbed by Sean Longstaff on the edge of his box in the Palace 4-0 defeat to Newcastle. So he has some things to work on. Arsenal currently have a very strong pairing in William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, but as they hope to go deep in Europe under Arteta, the demands on the squad will ramp up. So another depth option, another player that's going to allow us to rotate the way that we did against Sheffield and not lose any of our quality. And we've seen with Manchester City over the years that they've had a stock of center backs. And I don't think that Arteta is going to veer away from that thought process that you're going to need players that allow you to play your game at the halfway line. Players that are comfortable playing out of the back, but have the athleticism to go in the other direction. Last year, Pep had Ake, he had Akanji, he had Stones and Ruben Diaz and Laporte. I don't think we're going to be any different than them, y'all. I think we're going to have a lot of defenders all the time under Mikel Arteta. So Guehi is an interesting link. I think he's a really good player. I rate him very highly. I would love him at Arsenal for the right fee. I think when you start getting over the 50 million mark, I start to get a little bit more worried about it. But, we spent 50 million on Ben White a couple of years ago. So, is Guehi not worth more than that now in this market? Who knows? You guys will let me know. But I want to know what you guys think about this link because there are bigger priorities. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need a center back, but there, I think, are other positions that we want to hear more about. We want to hear more about the striker. We want to hear more about the winger. We'll talk about Pedro Neto in a second. So I don't think that this is anything that will get people excited, but do you like the player? Is this a player that you could see at Arsenal doing well for us? Do you think he could play across the back line? I think he's somebody that could also probably play as a fullback too, but in the way that Arsenal players play as a fullback, So like the link, it really does align with Arsenal's, recruitment strategy of players 23 to 25 from the Premier League. Whether you like that or not, that's up to you. But it really does align with what we've seen from Arsenal over the last couple of years in terms of recruitment. So I'm not surprised to see this link. I'm not surprised to see that it hasn't went away. I'm surprised at maybe what level of priority this is at, but I do like the player and I would love him at Arsenal. So there you go. Zich says, I like the player, but Kivior should be given more time in the pitch. Hopefully we address other areas of concern first. C. Wilder says, I hope it does mean there's a departure on the horizon. I love our current defensive set. It doesn't mean. I hear you. Yassine says, Manchester City will potentially look at re-signing Crystal Palace defender Marc Guehi with everything pointing towards a bidding war. Yeah, so Manchester City as well are involved or want to be involved. C. Wilder says he's predominantly right-sided, isn't he? Guess it makes sense in a way. Kivior, Gabs, and Tommy are all left-siders. And we are a little bit, when you look at the composition of our back line and how the depth is set up, we don't have enough players playing on the right-hand side. I think Ben White's cover is still a little bit, Tomiyasu can play there, but I think we all know that Tomiyasu is better on the left. So you have Kivior and Tommy backing up the left-hand side, but you really only have Timber backing up the right-hand side, and even he was playing on the left. So you need to bring in somebody that's going to feel comfortable playing on the right, maybe playing, but I've seen Marc Guehi play on both sides, so maybe it's just getting somebody that can cover multiple positions, that can play at a high level, but right now we have a lot of players on that left, and we probably need to shift some players over to the right. And I don't necessarily think that this means Kivior is never going to play or anything like that. I just think Arteta wants different profiles of defenders and to make sure that what happened last season when you have two defenders go down, that we still have people there. We had two defenders go down last season at the same time, and it completely torpedoed our entire season. Like, I do think that Arsenal lacked some things in the final third, and we missed penalties and we made individual errors. But I think not having a center back that you felt comfortable in, it threw everything out of balance. And so I don't think Arteta ever wants to go through that again. And I don't either, Let's see what you guys are saying. Aman says, would prefer Diomande, but he wouldn't be a bad option. We do need cover for Saliba that can play as a middle center back. And here's the thing. Diamande is probably a better fit, but Arsenal's recruitment policy over the last couple of years has been Premier League proven players. We like to buy within the Premier League, which gives us a little bit of a premium. We have to pay a premium for these players, but I think there's less of a chance that they don't work out. Do you guys agree with that? And so would you prefer Arsenal to venture out beyond, the Premier League and try to look at players that are in League One, in, Portugal and stuff like that, knowing that the adaptation probably will take a little bit longer and the likelihood of success for that player might not be as high. What do you guys think about that? Because it's something that me and my friends talk about quite a bit, is our recruitment policy and whether or not we're getting the most out of our signings. Are we spending a little bit too much on players that are Premier League proven because we don't want to have to deal with the uncertainty of players come from other leagues? If we had better recruitment, could we, go out to other leagues and find the players and not feel so like, worried about them not adapting? We have been bitten in the butt a couple of times by players coming to the Premier League at Arsenal and not working out. You have Tavares, didn't work out. Sambi didn't work out. So maybe Arsenal are like, we don't want to deal with that anymore. But Diamande looks the business. He really does. I think he's, from a physicality standpoint and like his height and things like that, he's really good playing out from the back. He's similar to Saliba, but he plays on the other side. And so, but he's younger and maybe he doesn't adapt as quickly. So what do you guys think about that? Because yeah, I have mixed feelings about it. I have mixed feelings about it. Social Joy says Diamande or bust. He's just a better fit. P-Way says baller. Boy says Kivior, Timber, Martinelli, Partey. None of these players are prem proven. Get Diamande. He's worth every penny. Yeah, none of them are, but I do think that we have a strong emphasis on Premier League proven. And Martinelli is I take Martinelli out because I think he's an outlier. He's a unicorn. Very rare that you're going to go to the fourth division in Brazil and buy somebody and it just works out. I think Tomiyasu, Kivior, and Timber are better examples than Martinelli because he's just special. Odegaard also didn't come from the league. That works, but we have been very consistent at buying certain players from the league. So Zinchenko, Jesus, Havertz, fucking Declan Rice, like we love the league. So there you go. What I will say is that I like defenders from League One. Like I think that that's a good place to get defenders from. Portugal haven't really, you have Ruben Diaz that came from there. You have several like really good defenders that have come from there, coming from Sporting. So, and DMs, midfielders from there, Matthias Nunes, also Paulinha. So you can look at Sporting as a place where, in terms of going to Sporting and Portugal in general, getting players from there tends to work out, I think. Who else? Luis Diaz. He went to Liverpool. I think Nunez is a good player too. Darwin Nunez. So yeah, it's you have to look at it, I think, and we have a mix, but is paying 50 million for Marc Guehi, let's say we pay 65 million for Marc Guehi, is that better than spending 60 something million on Diamande? I don't know. Diamande is also, he's going to cost a lot. Like they already said that they rejected our 35 million offer. So they want much more. So it's interesting, I think. It's interesting. Chosen One says, by the way, Sacafish 24. Sorry, I know it's not related. I hear you. You guys know Ballon d'Or for me, it is what it is. I'm glad our players are involved, but I feel like our players are really good and they're never going to get as much credit as I feel like they deserve. It is what it is. It's a popularity contest. Let's see what else you guys are saying. So yeah, I feel like the overall feeling from you guys is I don't really want a center back. I want something else, which is fine. Chris Frazier says, can't be spending more money on CBs, in my opinion. Gabriel, Saliba, Tommy, Kivior, Timber are all natural center backs. We need more fullback options and attackers for a decent player, though. I disagree with this because Timber and Tommy are mostly going to be used at fullback. I think we can use them at center back, but I think you have to look at just because somebody played somewhere else for another team doesn't mean he's an option for this manager at that position, if that makes sense. So I think Tomiyasu and Timber are fullback options for us. So that takes two center backs away. I think we have Saliba, Kivior, and Gabriel. I think those are center back options. Does anybody disagree? White, he's a fullback now. Even when he played center back at the beginning of the season, it didn't feel right. So he's an option, but do you really want to weaken another position anyway? If we have to go to Newcastle and we get an injury to Saliba, I don't want Tomiyasu moving to right side of center back. I want him playing left back because we need him at left back. So when you put them in the positions that they actually play for us, you actually do see that our center back options are not as deep as people are making them out to seem. We can, just because you're a natural center back somewhere else, doesn't mean you're a center back for Arsenal. The center backs for Arsenal have to be specific, fast, athletic. They have to be able to play on the ball. They have to have the same. It's like you look at Gabriel and Saliba. When you take one of them out, we look different. So I do think that our center back options are not as deep. We can have players that we can move there, which is fine. But I can understand why Arsenal want to bring in one more. Because if you, let's say, like I said, if Tomiyasu is needed at right side of center back, but we're playing against Newcastle or Liverpool, then your Zinchenko is playing there, and we don't want Zinchenko playing in those games. So, I'd like to keep Tommy and Timber in fullback positions, Ben White in fullback positions, because that's where they're best for us. And then, at least at this stage, and bring in another center back. But it's not that important. Like, it's not, for me, it's not bigger than the striker or anything like that. I'm just saying it's something that I feel like we need. So yeah, here to there says what we are missing from the back line is a Kyle Walker profile who can lock down even the quickest of wingers. Is that not Tommy? They don't look the same because obviously, like, Tomiyasu is a center back profile and Kyle Walker is like a natural fullback. But is Tommy not that person for us where we're going to put him up against the best wingers and he's going to shut him down? Kyle Walker is much faster than Tomiyasu, but do we need another shutdown fullback? And like, who is that player? Because Kyle Walker is a unicorn. There's certain players in the world that I just feel like you have to look at them and say, you know what? There's probably not another one coming down the pipeline anywhere. There's a reason why I think Manchester City were desperate to keep him, because they're not going to find another player that can play like a center back, also play like a natural fullback, is one of the fastest. He's experienced enough. Like, Kyle Walker is a freak of nature, but we have a player in our team that can do that. Yassine says, if Guehi signs for Arsenal next summer, who should he replace in the starting 11? Nobody. I don't think he's going to replace anybody. I feel like people are desperate to get maybe Gabriel out of the team and see somebody else there, but I think it's Gabriel and Saliba until somebody can really show that they can complement Saliba a lot better. There's nobody that complements. So there may be players that you feel like are better on the ball, but they don't complement Saliba the same. So I'm a little bit reluctant to be like, yeah, Guehi come straight in and take Gabriel's spot, because it's hard. Like, there's nobody like Gabriel and Saliba that complement each other that way. So that's why Kivior, I don't think, plays as much, because he doesn't complement Saliba in the exact same way. So I think he just becomes a part of the squad. It's so hard to see anybody being able to break that partnership at this stage. So yeah. But let's go ahead and move on, because people want to talk about Zubimendi. I also want to talk about Zubimendi. Remember, we had that conversation a couple of days ago about who's the perfect partner for Declan Rice if it's not within our team, which I feel like a lot of us feel like it's not. It's not an internal, like, the perfect partner for Declan Rice is not something that we can find in our team. We can find internal solutions for the meantime, but because left center mid is a little bit of like a mystery right now, and we're seeing that Declan Rice needs probably a different type of player near him or next to him in most games. We feel like that partner is probably not at Arsenal. So we're going to need to shop, maybe. Jorginho, Partey, Elneny are all in their 30s. So there's going to be a shift. No matter what people feel, there's going to be a shift, so whether it's this season or next season, there's going to be a shift. These players are going to go. So Zubimendi is a player that we've been linked to before, that we tried to get in January, but he wanted to stay at Real Sociedad. This is the only club he's ever been at, Real Sociedad. For it's where it's where he grew up. So I think he has a really strong affinity. And because Real Sociedad got into the Champions League, he didn't want to leave them, which makes sense. If it's like the first time you're going to play in Champions League with the team that you grew up at, you're going to stay, So I think we're going to have a difficult time getting him, even though I feel like he would come. This is who they're saying is going to be the heir to the Busquets throne. Like, he is somebody that is very highly rated in Spain, and I would love to pluck one of their best prospects out of their league and take him to the Premier League. Zubimendi, the more I watch him, he's the perfect partner for Declan Rice. He's a better version of Jorginho. He can do the Jorginho things, but can play in a more physical situation. Like, he has the legs. He can play a little bit higher than Declan Rice. He can play a little bit deeper than Declan Rice. Like, I want to see somebody that is going to complement Declan Rice's athleticism, ball carrying, ball winning, get a brain next to him, somebody that can unpick locks, somebody that could be a little bit more creative. You combine those two players together and you have the best pivot in the world. Right now, we have bits and pieces of that from Thomas Partey and Jorginho, but it's not quite enough. I think Zubimendi is perfect. He's 24. He has his best years ahead of him. He looks the part. Every time I see him play for Real Sociedad, I'm like, that's the exact player I'm trying to describe. He's not a ball winner type, but we don't need that because we have Declan Rice. We need a Jorginho, but young with legs. Does that make sense? That's what Zubimendi is to me. So I'm loving it. I'm loving that the links have come back up. Arsenal are still want Zubimendi, and I'm glad that we're not letting go, because let's say Real Sociedad, they're doing well in Champions League, but they're not going to win it. They're not going to win it. Let's be serious. Like, they're doing well right now, but they're not going to win it. And if they're not inside the top 4 in La Liga, I do think we have a good opportunity to bring him to Arsenal, because I think he wanted to stay because it was the first time he's going to play in Champions League for his hometown team. But if they're not making it, you got to move on at some point if you want to, and why not come to Arsenal? Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta is keen on Real Sociedad midfielder Martin Zubimendi, while Real Madrid's Aurelien Tchouameni is also of interest. We're never getting Tchouameni. We're never getting Tchouameni, but Zubimendi, yeah, he looks the part. This link makes me very happy. I hope we really take it serious, and not in January. Like, I know people are like, but what about January? We're not getting him in January, midway through the season. This is a summer situation. From now until the end of the season, we're probably in the scenario where we're going to have to hope that Thomas Partey is fit enough, and some combination of Jorginho and Declan Rice, or the midfield that we saw the other day, or those combinations of players gets us over the line, right? But in the summer, this is the player that we need to be bringing in to play next to Declan Rice, because you have Declan Rice, Zubimendi, and Odegaard. To me, that's one of the best midfields in Europe, and they balance each other out quite well if you want to stick with a 4-3-3. So this is the player for me. This is the one I want. You guys can let me know who you want, but Patino coming back in, I don't know. It's looking like it's making sense to me. It's making more sense. I love it. I love it. Boy says, don't actually want Zubimendi off this description. We can get better. Who can we get that's better? If you guys can name somebody who's better, let me know, because we're talking about very small margins here. People always talk about, I know somebody's better, but who are these players? Like, let's see. P-Way says Zubimendi's clever passing skills. He does. He has that clever kind of like Jorginho. He can find those little slip balls, he likes the little dink over the top. He has a good passing range. Now, people are like, I don't think his passing range is that good. He's not as good as Busquets. I'm going by what Xavi is saying about him. I'm going by what the Spanish media is saying about him. I'm going by what they're saying. I'm sure they know better than anybody who is going to be the next number 6 for Spain. And they say it's Zubimendi. So he is the heir to Busquets' throne. That doesn't necessarily mean that he has the exact same qualities, but this is the player that they feel like is gonna suit that role the best. I like that player. Like, that's for me. Like, I'm loving it. Um, Aman says Zubimendi is class. Let's see. Social Join says if it happens, it happens. Line breaking passing, holding mids. Really dead out here. Maybe, I don't know. I don't really agree with that, to be honest. Demetrios says Arteta and Zubimendi share the same hometown and agency, probably know each other's families and know each other personally. Gunny says Fofana is better in my opinion, but that is a personal take. I think they're different. I think the perfect partner for Declan Rice is somebody that's more of a passer and that's going to find those little dink balls over the top and find the seams. I think Fofana is the type of player that you want for a certain scenario. So you're going to want Fofana at like the end of games to, if you need somebody that's going to help you win the ball a little bit more, you're going to want him next to Declan Rice, right? In the scenario that we were in against Chelsea, where we're playing up against Conor Gallagher and Caicedo, and you're going to want maybe Fofana in there too, so you can help win the ball when you're duels, right? Away from home against Liverpool, you might want to have Fofana in there for some of the game to make sure that you get a hold of the ball. But on a daily basis, you're probably going to want Declan Rice plus a passer. Fofana is a player, as a profile that we're missing, but he's not the everyday partner for Declan Rice. I feel like if you have Fofana and Declan Rice together, what you're going to want against Sheffield and all these teams that are sitting in is somebody that's going to be able to pick a pass. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying Fofana cannot pick a pass, but what he's better at is progressing the ball, winning duels, a lot of things that Declan Rice does, but sometimes you want two Declan Rices in your team, you know? Um, Travis says, who plays a six if Zubimendi comes in? I think I'd rather look at Fofana. I think they can kind of work on angles. Sometimes Declan Rice can go forward, sometimes he can sit in. It just depends. But kind of the same way that we're playing with Jorginho in that role, where Jorginho sits a little bit more and Declan Rice kind of like shoots forward and comes back and sits in the pivot with him. I really like it. Aman says we need one more CM after Zubimendi. Zubimendi is like not the only midfielder, but he's the perfect partner for Declan Rice for most games. I think a player like that, if that makes sense. So people want other players. If you guys can name me better, like what you guys would want, people are saying Fofana more. You're not like on most games that we play, 90% of the game, 99% of the games, we have the ball. So Fofana is an off the ball option for me. He's fantastic and I would want him as well. But for 99% of the games where we have all of the ball and we need to break people down, Fofana is not going to help you as much as a Zubimendi would. That doesn't mean you don't need a Fofana, but he's a tool that you're going to use against Liverpool away from home, Man City when we're off the ball, things like that, if that makes sense. So yeah, I understand that people want somebody else, which that's cool, But Arteta, like we've been linked to sixes mostly. If you guys have noticed that. Like even I forget who said it, but somebody was like, even after we bought Declan Rice, they were, the rumors coming out were like, we weren't looking for an 8, we're looking for another number 6. So maybe Arteta's looking to move to a different formation. Maybe he's looking to go more to a double pivot in the next year or so. We don't know what Arteta is looking to do. I'm not really thinking about the formation so much. I'm thinking about who's going to get the best out of Declan Rice. What do we need on the other side of Declan Rice that's going to allow our team to tick a little bit more? And what we're missing is a passer. We're missing a controller. We're missing somebody on that left-hand side. I don't necessarily feel like we need that, like a Kai Havertz type that's off the ball that wants to just float. I don't think that's what we need. And if you have Timber back there, Tomiyasu back there, you don't like Zinchenko comes in to do the midfield thing, I think because we don't have anybody else to do that position on the left side. If you have Zubimendi there, you don't need him, so it's an interesting one. I think this is the type of partner that you want for Declan Rice. And it's not so much about the formation, it's about partnerships for me, because we know we don't play in any sort of like semblance of a formation. We know that players are just existing within this chaotic control. So I love it. Mafia Boss says Zubimendi is technically good and has a strong tackle. I think so. Let's see. Samuel says Zubimendi is the type of player we might go in the summer. We ain't got money for that. We kind of broke. It's a summer thing. Partey, Elneny, Jorginho, all these guys, they're gonna go soon. So we need another player that can kind of, do some of those things. What you guys are like devastated by is that you don't have those passes in between the lines that you had with Thomas Partey. So why now people don't want it if it's coming from a different player? I don't get that. I agree that I feel like we need somebody like that, like a Jorginho or Thomas Partey that can pick the pass next to not next to Declan. But it's like, well, if it's not Thomas Partey, then I don't want it. That's weird to me. Kenneth says we need Joshua Kimmich. I love Kimmich. And in another world, I feel like that's the right player for us. But I have a very difficult time thinking that he's going to come to Arsenal unless we win the league. Here to there says, I don't understand why Arteta allows Zinchenko to literally have the complete free role. It's our biggest liability now, just as it was last year. It's about when he does it. It's about when he does it. Do you know what I mean? Like Zinchenko doing that against Sheffield worked. And against most teams in the league, it's going to work. Where it doesn't work is against the better sides that make him actually defend. And so I think what has happened now with Zinchenko is because he's had moments where he hasn't looked that great defensively or he's been caught out playing the role, that now we feel like we just need to scrap it all together. I don't think we need to scrap it all together. I think it's very useful in a lot of the games that we play, but not every single game. He needs to use Tomiyasu more. And maybe if Timber had been fit, he would have used Timber more. But I think now we're going way to the other thing where we're like, okay, well, Zinchenko is a liability and useless, when he's not useless. He's very, very good for us, like he was against Sheffield. Like 90% of the games, he's going to be good for us in that position. But against the better sides, yeah, we need to play with somebody that's going to be in that position probably, because they're going to make you defend, if that makes sense. They're going to make him defend. So yeah, Zahid says Jorginho upgrade. Let's see. Social Join says a bit worried that Fofana has better passing stats. That's the problem with stats. I need to see the pass lines from where on the pitch. Yeah, you need to but again, if you just watch a game with Fofana in it and you watch a game with Zubimendi in it, it's clear. Sometimes the eye test is better. And people that, like when we were talking about the Ramsdale versus Raya stuff, people were like, well, just look with your eyes. Because we're emotionally attached to Ramsdale, I do feel like you needed to look at the stats a little bit to understand why Raya would be in the team and things like that, whatever. Not really trying to get into that. But combination between stats and eye test can be very, very good. It's just people tend to really want to use one more than the other, whatever. But if you watch one game with Zubimendi and you watch one game with Fofana, you'll see Fofana is definitely like ball progressor, get the ball, get forward. He has a lot of similar traits as Declan Rice. And sometimes in games, you're going to want more than one Declan Rice in there. You're going to want to win your duels and get the ball forward, play on the counterattack, things like that. With somebody like Zubimendi, that's a different game, and I think we need both types of players. I'm not saying one or the other. I'm just saying, like, if I had to choose one, I would choose the one that I feel like is going to be most useful to us 90% of the time when we're playing, and that's Zubimendi, right? So yeah, you have to, if you just so I think it's very clear what the two players are very good at and what they're not, and why both of them would probably be really useful to us. So I don't think it has to be one or the other. Like, I don't think you can take Jorginho and Thomas Partey out of the team and just have Fofana and Declan Rice. I don't think you can have that. We all know that Jorginho and Thomas Partey add something on the ball that we're missing currently, so we need to add that back. And Zubimendi would add that back for you. Ansa says Fofana cannot break lines. We need a press-resistant, line-breaking, smooth passing midfielder, and Zubimendi has all of that. Mafia Boss says, is there any truth to the rumors on Tchouaméni? Probably not. We're never getting him out of Madrid, you guys. Like, as it's a pipe dream, I think. I think there's probably interest. Who wouldn't be interested in Tchouaméni? If you're trying to replace Thomas Partey, that's the player you're going to get. That's the player you're going to get. Like, he has a lot of those same characteristics. He's good off the ball. He's really good on it. Like, of course, like if you're looking to replace your DM that has the characteristics of Thomas Partey, you're going to probably look at Tchouaméni. Tchouaméni is a pipe dream, though. You're not getting him out of Madrid. Players don't leave Madrid unless they're like kicked out. and he's starting for them right now. So I think he waited a whole year to be trusted by the manager. So unless something catastrophic happens from now until the end of the season, I think we need to look elsewhere. But I would love Chouameni, but like that door closed when he left France for me. Here to there says we need to move away from Zinchenko ASAP. A Zubimendi controller helps that. I think we could do both, you know. Um, but I think we need to make sure that Zinchenko is not playing every single match. So I agree with you there. Social Join says the truth is no one is giving up their key players in winter. All big moves are in the summer. Euros are coming up. I don't think you can get Jimenez in the winter. I only see big moves in the summer. This is mostly a summer thing. I'm not really talking about January. Young says, I think it has less to do with players and more to do with how teams are defending the buildup. We could have prime Busquets, and it wouldn't matter against the zone. Against the zone defending we're seeing lately. King Cobra Kai says Zubimendi is the kind of midfielder that controls the game, an experienced head, just like Arteta likes. And I think that's a key thing that I think people maybe don't like about Mikel Arteta is that they want a different type of player. Like Klopp is going to bring in a different type of player in his midfield. Look at the players that he brought in compared to the players that we brought in. You can see the different the stylistic differences between Klopp and Arteta, you know, and so some people would prefer us to get runners and more, you know, ball progressor types. Like they would like that more busy running power midfield. We tend to go for a more controlled midfield. Seeing Declan Rice in our midfield is crazy because he just has that like bombastic personality. So it is giving controlled chaos. We're very controlled chaos, where I think Liverpool is chaos, you know? So I can understand not wanting Zubimendi because he gives off Jorginho vibes, you know, but he does have more legs than Jorginho. He has the tackle in him. He's not going to get ran over, but I can understand that people are desperate to see a more like punchy midfield. But the way that we play, Arteta wants control. I don't think he wants guys dribbling through the middle and like I don't think that's what he really wants. I think he really wants like, you know, a little bit more of a controlled chaos feel. So, if I had to choose the midfielders that I want, just blanket would probably be different than what I'm saying now. But a lot of the choices, especially like if you're asking me about Zubimendi, does he complement Declan Rice? A lot of that is based on understanding how Arteta wants to play. If I just had a blanket choice, you know, I would choose a whole different types of midfielders, you know, because I prefer a little bit more craziness, you know. Keenan says, all we have is tens and sixes. Can we please sign an actual box to box before I lose it? Ask Mikel Arteta. We're constantly linked to number sixes. So clearly that's what he wants. He wants more of a double pivot feel, or like, you know, maybe we do move to a double pivot at some stage. But we can still get a number 8. But I'll ask you, like, is it more important for Arsenal, for everybody that's been yelling for like the last couple of weeks, is it more important, like how important Thomas Partey is and how desperate we are for him? Why is everybody not desperate to get that type of player back into the fold? Because that's what everybody's been screaming at me the last couple of weeks. It's we don't have Thomas Partey, so we can't breathe. You know, so we need to replace his qualities. If we need to replace his qualities, you're looking for another number 6. Thomas Partey is not 8. So what do we need? You know, I do think we need this player because we can't rely upon Thomas Partey, and we need these qualities. But if you have that, you're going to win most of your games, you know. So a number 8 is also important. But for people that were screaming at me about Thomas Partey, it's funny to me now that it feels like we're not that desperate to have those qualities back in the team. We'd rather have Fofana, you know? DJ Polar says, Jess wants rage. Arteta wants to drive down the coast with the top down playing Fleetwood. Exactly. Like, I just like a little bit more chaos, you know? But Aman, I think, gets it right saying Zubimendi and a pure 8 seems like the plan. And so I don't think it's Zubimendi or nothing. But if you think Arteta is going to potentially lose El Neni, Thomas Partey, and Jorginho and not replace the number 6 role or get us another player with those qualities, you're smoking high grade. Tell you guys, like, we're going to replace those qualities too. So maybe a number 8 comes in. Maybe Patino takes that spot. I don't know. Patino's looking pretty good. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But Zubimendi for me is good. very good. And I would love for him to come to Arsenal if we could get it done. But the fact that the link won't go away makes me think that it's something that they really want to make happen. Aman said thoughts on Onana from Everton. I'd rather Fofana. If we're gonna go for that type of player, like again, Zubimendi and Fofana, I tweeted that. I said Fofana in January, Zubimendi in the summer, Patino integrated. I think that covers all the bases for me personally. So if I have to get that box to box, number 8, a little bit more of an off the ball player, ball progressor, I'd rather Fofana. He'll cost less. I think he's a better player, but Onana's been playing in the Premier League and he's just sitting around at Everton. And he's probably desperate for a move. So, and he's taller, but it's not like Fofana's short. So Onana's okay, but he wouldn't be my first choice. Fofana would be my first choice in that type of position, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's see. Maman says Fofana is better, and here to there says Onana from Everton, good player, but not good value. Yo-Yo says deep line playmaker, death by 1,000 cuts. One man's 6 is another man's 8. It depends on whether it's a double pivot or a midfield 3. I think that's a really, really good point as well. Deep line playmaker, people don't love it. They want something else, and I understand that. But if you think about the way Arteta wants to play, it's not that difficult to understand why he'd want Zubimendi and why we're not desperate for this box number 8 that we still need, but his priority would always be to replace what Thomas Partey and Jorginho gives us, and then get a number 8 or allow the players that we have there already to play those positions. I think it's really obvious why we would go for Zubimendi over anybody else, or a player like that. Mafia Boss says Zubimendi wants to stay with Sociedad though. Just, do you actually believe that though? How many players have we seen that says that they're really happy at where they are right now leave? How many Arsenal players have done that? How many players have come to us after saying that they're very happy at places that they want to be? I heard Pedro Neto said that he's happy at Wolves the other day. Do you actually think he's going to turn down a move to Arsenal or Manchester United? He's not going to say, I want to leave my hometown club. He's from their academy. He's only played there. So he's not going to sit up there in an interview and say, you know what, actually, I'm looking for a move. The Premier League would be great. You're not going to say that, especially if he knows he's going to be there. I do not listen to players say, we've seen players say that they want to stay at places and leave in that very same window. So it doesn't matter. If Arsenal really want him and he's open to leaving, he will come. So will Neto. He sat up there and said he's happy at Wolves. He's probably happy at the moment. Is that a lie? No. He's focused on Wolves. Is that a lie? No. But does that mean if Arsenal come in, he won't come? No. Does that make sense? He'll leave at some stage. Maybe he felt like it was too early, but he'll leave. He'll leave. Here to there says, even when we had healthy Partey last year, our attack caved last year until Eddie got injured and Arteta had to play Trossard at false 9. Yeah, I don't know if I really agree with that. I think Eddie got stale. I think that's what happened. Eddie got stale, so there you go. Social Join says Zubimendi probably reminds Arteta of himself playing style. Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any Spanish manager not looking at that player and wanting that player. Not a Xavi, not a Xabi, not a Pep, not a no one. I think everybody, Spanish manager, is going to look at that player and say, yeah, probably. You know what I mean? So, yeah, there you go. But yeah, DJ Polar says that's all stuff for the press. I agree. So let's move on. Neto's interest cools. There's been reports today that Arsenal may not actually look at Pedro Neto over concerns of his injury issues. I feel really bad for Pedro Neto, you guys. If you guys watch Wolves over the weekend, you'll see that he got injured and had to be stretchered off, probably hamstring injury or something like that. So Arsenal may reassess a January move for Wolves winger Pedro Neto because of concerns over his fitness. And if there was any concern about him before the link started was whether or not he could stay fit. And Arsenal should not bring any more players with injury concerns into the team. I think as good as he is, if he's not going to be available, there's no point. And so we need reliability. We really do. So yeah, he started off the season really, really well, like a house on fire, one of the best players in the league. He has at least 5 assists, so for Wolves, this is terrible because he's their best player. But from an Arsenal perspective, for a lot of people that were really excited to see this player start playing to his true potential, this will be a little bit of like a knockback because you're just hoping that this player can stay fit enough so that your team can put in a bid. And he hasn't been able to do that. So who knows how long it'll take him to get back. But this is something that would definitely make me think twice about bringing him in, because if he can't stay fit, then there's no point in having him at the club. But we'll see what happens. I feel really first and foremost, feel really bad for him because he's a young player that was just hitting form again, and boom, another injury. They had to stretcher him off, so it's definitely a muscle injury. And depending on how bad it is, he could be out for some weeks, so but Arsenal will not be looking at this player if he continues not being able to be fit. It sucks, it really does. He's such a good player. Boy says don't go for Neto, he will be even more injury prone at Arsenal. John P says Zubimendi is right now world-class. People need to respect this man. Yo-Yo says Neto's fragility will force him to play in Saudi sooner rather than later. Shame. I hear you. DJ Polar says if that's a hamstring injury after he comes back from an ACL injury, he's going to lose a lot of explosiveness, which is a part of his game. And that's the thing about explosive players is once they lose that little bit of a burst, they're just not as I don't want to say useful, but they're just not as effective, And I worry about that. But you know what I will say? If you want him to get injured, you want him to get injured before you make a bid so that you can reassess. The last thing you want is for him to get this injury at Arsenal. So if that's, what makes Arsenal, think twice, then you dodge a bullet and it is what it is. But really good player, and I suspect I expect Arsenal to push this down, kick this can down the road until they find the perfect player. I feel like they've been very reluctant to just get anybody here. I think they've been really reluctant to just buy any player. We went after Rafinha and we didn't hear anything after that. And so I wouldn't suspect Arsenal to just say, okay, let's turn to the next guy. Kubo is also somebody that we're looking at, but maybe it's something that gets the can gets kicked down a little bit further. I also think there's an argument to be made that if we were to bring in a striker, which should probably be our number one priority, that you could play Gabriel Jesus on the wings and probably be fine. Gabriel Jesus is more than good enough to play on the wings. He has his own injury situation, but you still have Trossard, you have, Jesus that could play there. And so maybe it's not as desperate of a situation as striker is, but also we have a player that just got a hat trick. So do we actually need a striker? I don't know. I'm just joking, but yeah. Aman says we need another direct winger because Nelly is the only one we have. Would love Neto only if he's fit. I think we, as desperate as we probably feel like we are for this player, it doesn't make sense to just get somebody just because, you still need to get I'm all for flexible recruitment. We've spoken about this before. I don't think you always have to get your number one target. I think sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you need to compromise. This is not a situation you compromise on, though. You don't just bring in a injury prone player or somebody that you can't rely upon fitness wise just because you're desperate for and you can't just bring in anybody, so I do think Arsenal need to be a little bit careful here. There's not a lot of good wingers out there. There's prospects, but that's it. And so Arsenal, I would not be surprised if you can't get Pedro Neto, then you kick that can down a little bit further down the line because they wanted Mudryk, they couldn't get him. Can't get Neto because he's probably going to be injured. So, but you don't just want to bring in anybody, and you definitely don't want to bring him in as he's injury prone. If you feel like he's injury prone, I think there's enough to say that he's injury prone. Amon says, yeah, shame. He's so injury prone. Keenan says those old Musa Diaby links starting to look a little like a real missed opportunity, Jess. Potentially. Do you actually think Musa Diaby was going to sit on our bench, though? That's another thing is you have to look for somebody that's going to be okay with not playing every single week in and week out. He's playing every day with Unai Emery. So we don't know what the circumstances is, or was with Musa Diaby. We were linked. So we probably did speak to him. But, there's some players that, you say, you're not a number one starter. You're going to have to work for your position. And the person, oh, by the way, that you're going to have to fight for a position for is Bukayo Saka. And they're going to say, I think I'll go Villa. I'll still go to the Premier League. I'll still get a pay rise, but I'll play week in and week out. Neto probably would accept the rotational role because he's an Arsenal fan, or, maybe he has an affinity towards the club. So Musa Diaby is a great player. I think he looks really good, at Aston Villa. But we don't always know the conversations happening behind closed doors. And that's something that we spoke about during the summer is, yes, you would take Musa Diaby. Of course you would. But would he actually want to come in and fight for a position? Would he? Who knows? But he is a really good player. DJ Polar says, need Edu to take a trip to Brazil. Country is littered with wingers. I think he can find one for cover. Well, we've got Marquinhos. Why not just recall him? Here to there says Jesus can cover the flanks. First, striker is first and foremost. I agree. Chris Fraser says, agree with Keenan. Missed a trick with Diaby. Can play on both sides. Imagine being able to rotate Saka, Martinelli, and Diaby across all comps. We don't know the whole situation with that, but on paper, it was a missed opportunity. But, then there's tons of missed opportunities because we don't actually know what happened. Maybe he didn't want to come to Arsenal. Who knows? But very, very good player. Not saying he's not, Samuel says, I was watching that game and I was literally thinking what he could bring to our club and then gets injured. We needed that explosive, different type of player who can help Saka, but it is what it is. So yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't want to hear anything about Leao, you guys. I'll be so honest with you guys. One of the most, I think, egregious things that I've heard Arsenal fans talk about, and even rival fans, is Leao being better than Martinelli. Touch grass. He's a good player that's very hyped. He's hyped. He is. Probably settled, like he stunted his own growth by staying at AC Milan. I think he needed to go somewhere else. Signing that new contract was like signing your life away. But he hasn't developed at all. Like he still is, first of all, lazy off the ball. Start there. And he's also somebody that tends to like do nothing. A couple of little runs that he does, little tricks, flicks. That doesn't move me. I'm so sorry. I need effectiveness. I need goals. I need work rate. I need stuff. So Leao, as far as I'm concerned, he's just all right. He could end up being another player that we thought was going to end up being the next world beater, but stays his entire career in Serie A doing nothing. He has not improved at all, and Martinelli is clear of him as far as I'm concerned. Leao is great, but every time I watch him, I'm like, what are y'all watching? Are you guys just watching comps? The guy's all right. He does one or two little mazy runs. One thing that he does have is pace. Pace, direct, yes. But, I mean, I can put anybody up front and just going to run forward and lose the ball, so whatever. Like, he's good, but, like, please don't speak to me about Leao. Yo-Yo says Leao is a Portuguese Rashford. Yo-Yo tells the truth. Eric Flores says he's still young, though, but he's just signed a long-term contract at AC Milan. That he needed to move clubs, so I think there's windows of opportunity for players where they either have to stick or twist. They need to get with another manager that's going to help them develop. A player like Leao needs a really good manager to help bring the best out of him, or he's just going to be Gervinho. He could either become Mbappe or Gervinho. Like it's a slippery slope. And staying at AC Milan for a couple more years, that could be the window. You go from being a highly, talked about prospect to some guy we used to know, you know? So I didn't understand why he stayed. Maybe if he leaves this summer and goes somewhere, that he could really be, he needs coaching so badly, this player, because he has the raw tools, but raw tools ain't shit. We seen Pepe. He had all the raw tools, but he didn't have nothing else, So I really think that Leao is so hyped. I really do. Good player, not better than Martinelli. Don't necessarily feel like we need him. Um, I do like Boniface, but again, another raw player, probably at a really good place for him because Xavi seems like a really good coach. So I like Boniface. He looks good. Nusa is probably the right pick. Nusa, the Norwegian player, he looks like the right pick. I would love to bring in somebody that's, especially if we go out there and get like a really big striker signing, somebody that can be molded into one of the best wingers in the world. Antonio Nusa is probably that player. He's younger than Leao, and he's not jaded. He's new and he's very good. Go watch Antonio Nusa, and I'll show you a winger that would fit us very well. Beats his man, tons of skill, but also can play. He's not just a head down, running straight, running out the touchline. Like, he has a lot about his game. I really like Antonio Nusa. That's probably the player. If I had to do like an under the radar type of signing for that position, I'd go after somebody like this. Manny says, "Don't you still want Mudryk though?" I do like Mudryk. I think Mudryk as well. Like, you have to go to the right club at the right time. If he goes to Arsenal, I think he is a different player than what he is at Chelsea. Chelsea, I don't think understand how to get the most out of that player. That player is very explosive, very direct, and so I think you need to go to the right club. I think going to Chelsea will hurt him. They have too many young players that they're trying to mold at the same time. You don't. Poch has a big job on his hands. He has like 5, 6 players that he has to develop all at once, and so Mudryk is going to fall down the pecking order a little bit. Very good player, I think Mudryk is. Made a mistake going to Chelsea, and again, that's what I say about Rafael Leao. I think you have a window of opportunity to make the right decision at the right time. Mudryk was supposed to go to Brentford. Like, Brentford put in the first bid for him. Brentford know what the fuck they're looking at. Arsenal also wanted him for 30 million, but it became a bigger deal. Then he goes to Chelsea. He loses a whole half of the season. He's slandered. He's treated like crap. Then he's just there with all these other young players. He would have been fine if he had come to Arsenal. I think he's actually a very talented player, but he needs the right manager to take that out of him. But we're over him now. He's not coming to Arsenal. So let's talk about Antonio Nusa, because he looks like the next thing. And you want to get him before it becomes insanely obvious, like it did with Mudryk. Mafia Boss says Musiala from Bayern. We're never getting anywhere near him. Nuances of Faith says, I don't see what everyone sees in Nusa. Social Join says Nusa and Bino would suit us. We talked about Bino the other day as well. To me, there's nothing that I think it's a part of our history to bring in young players that can be molded into the next best thing. And if you're going to have Saka and Martinelli playing 90% of the games, you want to bring in somebody that will get to play cup games and things like that so that they can develop, but aren't going to be like knocking on Mikel's door every 5 seconds asking for playing time. That's kind of the balance that you have to get. Right. And so if you replace Reece Nelson with an 18-year-old that's kind of like has the potential to be something, but will do well in cups and things like that, I would not be upset with that. But the interest in Neto is, I'm not surprised that it would cool, because I'm sure Arsenal were like, we just want to see if he can make it through the entire season, and he hasn't been able to. Here to There says Nusa at a decent fee and at his age would make more apt to accept a secondary role to Saka. That makes sense. I know it makes sense. Nah, I said it. No, I'm just joking. But it does make sense. It does make sense to me. But to other people, they want the finished article. And I just wonder if the finished article would actually want Saka's going to play 70 games this season. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we talk about playing on both sides. Saka is wearing the captain's armband when Odegaard's not there. This is a player that Arteta is going to manage to be like our Salah. Salah doesn't have a backup. Salah plays every game. Saka is going to be the exact same way. So I think this idea that we're just going to have Saka and Martinelli and this other guy rotating, no. This player is going to get a lot of minutes at left wing, which is also why I think we've been linked to more left wingers than right wingers. But this player is going to be playing left wing in cups and maybe a little bit at right wing. So I think that player is probably more of a younger player, or maybe like Neto because he's just desperate to come to Arsenal. But, you know, I think, it could end up just being Jesus rotating because, we're going to buy a striker and we should. And we should. Eric Flores says we should try to get another CDM like Paulinho. I don't think we need Paulinho because we already have Declan Rice. Like what does Paulinho add to us in complement to Declan Rice? Do you just like as a backup? Is that what you mean? Let me know what you're thinking about that. Chris says Bino Giddens just signed a new contract at Dortmund till 2028. He's gonna cost hella money. So yeah, DJ Polar and Keenan are loving what each other is saying. DJ Polar says Havertz swap back to Chelsea for Modric. Let's go. Universe Saturdays equals youth says Nusa is a good player, but is he risky? He's not a top 4 PL quality yet. We always talk about this though as Arsenal fans. It's like we are always looking at players like that come in to the Premier League and we're like, why didn't we go get them? Why don't we go get them before they were something? It's because of this exact reason. It's because it needs to be obvious for us. I don't think somebody that's developing under Saka and Martinelli, we have to know with all certainty that they're going to become the best winger in the world. I think they just have to have the potential, and Arteta has to back himself to get the best out of that player. So it's not that risky to me. Let's say we bring in a striker and we bring in Nusa and he's 18 and it's a risk. You still have Trossard. You still have Jesus that can play off of the wing. So is it really that big of a risk? What are we going to lose? What is he going to cost? So I think sometimes like we want to know for certainty that this player is going to be good enough. So we want to bring in the ready-made thing. But I think it's worth it to bring in young players that we can develop into the best because it saves you money. It saves you money. And sometimes the developmental players become better than the obvious picks that are on the market right now. So in this particular position, like I would be more interested in bringing in a young winger than a young striker, if that makes sense. Like if we had to pick between the two and we're like, okay, we're going to get a more solidified winger and we're going to bring in a developmental striker. I'd rather be at the opposite, because I don't think we're going to be able to do both. I don't think we're going to be able to bring in a midfielder and a winger and a striker that are all going to be prime age, ready to go, because that's going to cost a lot of money. Something's going to have to give somewhere. So if you're going to bring in, a striker, a winger, and a midfielder, striker, midfielder, and a defender, one of those has to be a young player. I think I would choose the winger and make sure that the striker knows what they're doing, if that makes sense, So I watched Ferguson the other day and thought, he may have scored a goal, but he ain't ready to play for Arsenal. He's not ready to play for Arsenal, and not for 100 and something million. He's not, so bring in a striker that you already know can do the business, whoever that is. We don't know who that is. Bring in a young winger that, let's say it fails, you still have Trossard and Jesus that can play there. I don't see the risk. I don't see the risk, really. I really don't. Let's see what you guys are saying. Keenan says Paulinho would be fantastic for depth, but Fulham wants 80 million, which is bananas. Yeah, I don't see why we need Paulinho. If we need depth at CDM, it needs to be somebody that can do something different to Declan Rice, but that's just me. Here to there says spot on. We have 2 best wingers and Jesus also top wing. We need an Eddie replacement of prime age. Let's see. Eric Flores says, agree. We have talented youth in our own academy. That's all I'm saying is I don't think the winger that we bring in has to be Premier League proven, ready to go. Give me Matoma, give me Neto. I don't think it has to be that. I think you can bring in a younger player and allow them to develop. That's where I kind of am with that. Chosen One says, Jess, are you worried about Saka being a solid type player? I think it's possible, but he can also get rest now and then. If you listen to, the interview that he just did about the captaincy and having the armband, he said he's ready to play 70 games a year, a season. He wants to do it. So Saka, it's not that Arteta's forcing him to do it. Saka wants to do it. So it's obviously we're always going to be worried about our players because we have trauma as Arsenal fans because we've always had injury prone players, and some of our younger players that we kind of like put the house on haven't actually been able to fulfill those expectations because they've been injured so often. And so Saka is going to fall into that category of player that we're always worried about, that we're always concerned about. But he's telling you out of his own mouth, you guys, that he wants to play 70 games a season. He wants to be Salah type player. So Arteta is going to allow him to do that. Everything that Arteta has done with Saka shows me that he wants him to be that one fixture in the team that cannot be moved and will not be moved. So as worried as I am about it, because every time you see Saka pull up and hold his ankle, hold his knee, hold his hamstring, you get worried. But hopefully that'll go away over time because it'll show himself to be, the type of player that can persevere beyond those like knocks and stuff like that. But Arteta and Saka are telling us that he's going to play 70 games a season. So I think we have to get real comfortable with that. Boy says, I stopped worrying about Saka. Here to there says, add in Trossard. We have 4 wingers who can play significant minutes for any team in the world already. Yo-Yo says that Evan Ferguson doesn't jump off the screen for me, not like Caicedo, Basuma in the past or Matoma, Stupinian in the current side. I love Stupinian. That is a good player. But I hear you. Like, there's nothing about Evan Ferguson that says to me that we need to be giving 120 million to Brighton for him. Like, I just don't really see it. If we're gonna go for like a young under the radar striker, that younger, if we're gonna do that, I need that player to cost way less than that. So there you go. Here to there says spot on. We have, oh yeah, you already said that. Chris Fraser says agreed. Jess, we need a proven striker. Additional wingers can be project players. That's where I am in terms of the balance. So Neto, the interest in Neto has cooled, which doesn't really surprise me. Shouldn't really surprise you either. Odegaard is injured. That shouldn't surprise you either. So Arteta said after the Sheffield game that Odegaard has been dealing with a hip injury. And so that should not be surprising to anybody based on his form. And against Chelsea and against Sevilla, he was way worse than he had been in previous games. Like, it was night and day. I wonder if the Kovacic, tackle had something to do with it. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? I'm just guessing. But this makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that means that it just excuses everything before somebody comes at me because they're just like so desperate to like stick the boot into Odegaard. But he's dealing with an injury. So everything that we want to do this season, I do think Odegaard is a part of it. Everything good that we want to do, I think Odegaard is a part of it. I think people are desperate to make this team work without him, but I don't think it works as good without him. I think we need to find the best version of Odegaard to get the best out of what we want to do. We played against Sheffield. We would have beat Sheffield with Odegaard with one leg 5-0. So it's not that Odegaard was out and we played so much better. Played against a terrible side, and Eddie Nketiah became, Osimhen for a day. So Odegaard needs to be fit in order for us to do what, we want to do. And, I wonder if he'll play against West Ham. Like, Arteta treated the Sheffield game like the cup game. So I think he is going to go stronger against West Ham. It's going to be a very difficult game. Their backs are against the wall. They've lost 3 in a row, and Declan Rice is going to be on the pitch for us. So they're going to care about this game. So I wonder if Odegaard will start that game as well. But it makes a lot of sense that Odegaard has not been playing at his highest level because he has that hip injury. If you just watch him in the Community Shield, he looks like a completely different player. He's still not at his highest level, but he looks like a completely different player. And from there, his form just kind of like dook, 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 dook. And then Chelsea and Sevilla were shocking, so hopefully he can get back up to a decent level of fitness, but our depth is what allowed him not to have to play. And so I think Arsenal are making good strides forward, by being able to play a rotated squad without your captain, without Big Gabby, without Jesus, and kind of just like blow Sheffield away. Sheffield are an awful side, but like I was saying this on the podcast earlier, that will come out later on today for Patreon, on Patreon. But against Nottingham Forest last season around the exact same time, um, we played our best 11 and beat them 5-0. So I know that it's like, oh, well, it's Sheffield. Last season, we had to play our best 11. Arteta was scared to rotate, like scared to rotate. So we're getting there slowly but surely. I know people are like, oh my God, we don't have any depth. We do. Our depth is much better than people think it is, but we don't see those players play enough. If we see them play more and we give them the trust that they probably deserve, then we'll see more of them and we won't feel as, that they're not playing. I saw people were like worried before the Sheffield game because of the changes that we made. I was shocked by that. I was like, we still wipe them away. But I'm glad that people got to see a game with Kivior in it and we look good. A game with ESR and Kai in the 10 role and we look good. So I'm happy about that, but I'm hoping that, Odegaard is okay because again, everything that we want to do that's good, I think Odegaard has to be a part of the team, no matter how much you don't like him or you don't rate him or you don't think he steps up for big games. We still need him. Let's see. DJ Polar says Fabio Vieira and ESR in the 8th and Declan in the 6th. I think you're saying it against West Ham. Let's see. King Cobra Kai says Rice won't play against West Ham. Are you sure? Sure about that? Social Join says I'm sticking with Vlahovic. Oh Lord, if he doesn't leave in the summer, he's a Serie A guy, full stop, and he ain't leaving Italy. Let's see. Chosen One says, Jess, I'm really hoping they go strong. West Ham will whoop us if we treat this game the way we did Brentford. They are a good side, but West Ham is a level up. And the cup is so winnable, like so winnable. Yeah, but I think Arteta doing what he did against Sheffield, I think that's a decent indication that he's like, okay, West Ham is more important than Sheffield, which it's going to be a much more difficult game, like you already said. We're away from home to West Ham, and they're a better side than Brentford were. When we played them, they wanted no parts of that game. So I think Arteta will go stronger. Is he going to go as strong as he possibly can? No, because Newcastle is more important than West Ham. But I do think we're going to see a stronger lineup than we did against Sheffield. So maybe Gabriel comes back in. I probably still stick with Kivior. Odegaard maybe comes back in. We don't have the option to bring in Jesus. So, but we'll see. Here to There says this team doesn't win the league without Odegaard. People need to appreciate our captain. We could do much worse and we could have Bruno. Yo-Yo says, hope Odie fully recovers. Don't want this to be a lingering issue. A hip injury is nothing to play around with. Let's see. DJ Polar says, Jess, I wasn't convinced with Kivior, but I'm buying them stocks. You weren't convinced with what did he do against Sheffield that didn't convince you? Like, first of all, they didn't have a shot. So it could have been him on the ball because Kivior looked actually he was very good on the ball. So maybe you're saying before the game, maybe before the game, because after the game, anybody that's like super worried about Kivior should at least feel comfortable enough with him playing against, like, he doesn't have to play against City, but he can play against like Sheffield and Bournemouth and these guys. Like, Kivior is a good player, but I think you're saying before the game, but buy some Kivior stocks because that is a good player. We just need to use him more. Yo-Yo says Arteta used the squad. It's been a long time coming. Only positives can be taken from that game. I agree. Mafia Boss says, I will rest Declan against West Ham, Jess. Here to There says, if Declan tells Arteta explicitly he wants to play versus West Ham, Declan will play. The thing about West Ham is that they're going to have Alvarez and that other guy, Ward-Prowse, or they'll have one of Alvarez, Paquetá, and Kudus, or Ward-Prowse, Alvarez, and Paquetá. That's not really, those are not two midfield combinations that I want to go into with Jorginho and Elneny or Jorginho and Havertz and ESR. Like, I think we need Declan Rice in this game just to have like a physical presence in there, because if West Ham are anything, they're a physical side. They're going to tackle you hard. They're going to beat you down and they're going to be up for it. maybe if you guys are afraid that they'll hurt Declan Rice or something like that, but Declan is going to want to play against his ex side. Let's be for real. George says, hey, Jess, greetings from Texas. Oh, awesome. What part of Texas? I love Austin and I love Dallas, but I'm not a huge Houston person. So let me know where. But please continue to express your honest views. Blessings. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Eric Flores says Declan plays because Jorginho and Partey are slacking speed up against West Ham. Wait, Declan plays because Jorginho and Partey are lacking speed against West Ham. Kasim says Kivior's distribution. He has played as a DM for a previous club. I love it. Nocturnal says don't join the Kiwi bandwagon when he's out here balling consistently. Social Join says not sold on Kivior. He ducked that shot against Sporting. Messed around with his shoe against defending. That's not on. That was last season. We move on from that. Also, do you guys remember the Chelsea game? It was catastrophic from everybody in that second half. But yeah, I mean, if we want to hold that stuff against him, but not like update any of the current information on Kivior, then he was also very good he was good against Chelsea. It was Brighton that he's saying that he filled it with his shoe. Does the Newcastle and Chelsea game doesn't equal out the Sporting, and Sporting was his first game for Arsenal, by the way. I feel like we would give him a little bit of leeway there, but I'd say he was bad against Sporting and bad against Brighton, but he was good against Newcastle and good against Chelsea. So basically he's at a 50%. Now, what have you seen from him this season? Not that much, but what you have seen is against Brentford, he was quite good, and against Sheffield. So I'm not going to hold two performances from last season against him when he's had more good performances than poor. To me, that's not how it works. You know, in his first game for Arsenal, I'm sorry, Arteta set them up to fail. They had Jorginho back there with Zinchenko and Vieira and Xhaka, and we had Matt Turner and Saliba and Kivior. Like, it was a very disjointed lineup. So I could give Kivior, like, you're going to hold his first ever performance against him? Really? Like, I wouldn't. But that's just me, you know? Chris Frazier says, I don't think we have a choice with Partey injured. Rice will have to play. Here to there says Kivior is the type of player that would fit in Pep's squad. He has the size, pace, and ball quality. Needs to play more. You know, I think when you don't play that often, I feel like you feel pressure where it's like every single game that you play feels like the Champions League final because you need to like prove yourself. I wish Kivior would play a little bit more. I think I've seen a lot more positive from him than negative. I remember the good performances more than the bad ones, and the bad ones were more few and far between, where he's done really well. He played in that left back role. I think that's also something that, like, did you guys see Gvardiol against Manchester United? This is people consider him the best young center back in the world, better than Saliba. I don't, but people do. Did you guys see him in that left back role? City won, but I won't forget that performance. And the reason why I won't forget it is because you're watching one of the best center backs on the planet be moved to the left back role and not look comfortable on the ball, not know where their angles are, and struggle a little bit when he's looking back towards his goal because it doesn't look the same as when you're in the center. Now, apply that to Kivior, who's not considered one of the best in the world, but considered quite talented. Apply that to Tomiyasu. Apply that to Ben White. Apply that to all these players that we have playing center back that are center backs that are being asked to play in a way that doesn't it's not natural to them. If Gvardiol struggled, if you really watch the game, Gvardiol gave away the ball quite a few times and looked a little, yeah. If you guys watch that, then I think you'd give Kivior a little bit more grace. When he plays in center back, he looks a lot more comfortable. When he plays left back, it's a little more like he's trying to figure out the situation. So again, if Gvardiol struggles, then maybe we can give Kivior a little bit more time. Yo-Yo says, Rice is our safety latch. I want him to start every game, especially if there are changes in our back line. He is kind of like a safety blanket for us. Hugo says, if you have played defense, you appreciate Kiwi. I love Kiwi. So I fully have the stocks. I've been asking for Arteta to play him for a while. I just think he needs more than a game here or there. And yeah, also remember that he's not playing in a position that's easy for center backs to just be good at like that. Arteta's fullback center back role is not easy to learn. What did Ben White tell us? You have to be a number 10, a winger, midfielder, and a defender. And we expect Kiwi to do it perfectly on his first day out. No. Kiwi's doing fine. We just need to give him more time. Jordan says Kiwior can play CDM as well. He's played there for Serie A. So I love Kiwior. I just think he needs more time. And more people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And I kind of want him to keep his spot against West Ham. And I also think I want ESR to keep his spot as well. Here there says that Sporting Games Zinchenko was getting tormented by Marcus Edwards. Kiwior, besides the corner, miscommunication, handled it okay. Yeah, that's where maybe it seems like I'm just arguing it away and but to ask somebody to be like, I'm not his. Look at the team. I was very disappointed with, if you guys were watching the channel last season, I was very disappointed at the way that we set up against Sporting for both games. I thought Arteta did not take into consideration the level of competition that we're coming up against, and the fact that Europe is just so different than the Premier League. You cannot play Zinchenko and Jorginho as the pivot. It doesn't work. It's too weak, especially in Europe, because you're not going to be able to control the game because teams come at you. So he's learned a lot better. Like, he didn't do it against Sevilla. You see, he didn't do it against Sevilla, right? So he's learned. And so that team, he not only played it in the away leg where we drew 2-2, but he started with that same midfield at home. So when you have that midfield and Zinchenko popping into midfield, into that section, and leaving Kiwior exposed, this is the first time he's ever played with Zinchenko. And he's leaving him exposed over there. He's next to, who even knows what him and Saliba were talking about, because they don't speak the same language. And you got Matt Turner behind you. Yeah, I'm going to give him a pass. I'm going to give him a pass on the Sporting game. I cannot explain what happened against Brighton, but everybody was awful in the second half against Brighton. So I can throw those away and say that I think most of the times when Zinchenko has played, he's been quite good. Again, started against Newcastle, played really well. Started against Chelsea, played really well. And I think he should have came into the team a lot sooner. Kiwior can do it. He can do it. So yeah, but you guys, that's it for the show. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I have to put up the post-match podcast for Sheffield on Patreon, so I got some other stuff to do. So if you guys are patrons, you guys will get that within the next, let's say, hour or so, to enjoy that. It's 2 hours of pure hilarious banter, so you will enjoy it. If you guys want to become a patron, link is pinned in the chat, and it's also in the description box. But if I don't see you guys on Patreon, you guys will see me again tomorrow. We're gearing up for the West Ham game, and we'll probably do a little bit of a preview and that kind of stuff. So make sure you guys let me know in the comment section what you guys thought about the show and all the things that we spoke about. Do you guys want Zubimendi? Do you not? Are you upset about the Neto stuff? Blah, 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 blah. All that kind of stuff. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.